I say this with the utmost sincerity, so please pay attention, as this may be the most important message I can give to you right now. It's super relevant right now and will be more and more important in the coming weeks, months, and years ahead of us. You know that I don't like to drone on in these videos, so please bear with me because this takes a little context. I'm going to dive right in. Firstly, according to the founder of the world's largest hedge fund, Ray Dalio, we're at the brink of a brutal World War III, which sounds dramatic, I know. As if the Russia-Ukraine thing wasn't chaotic enough, now we have a conflict brewing in the Middle East, looking like Israel and the Arab nations might be heading for a showdown. And on top of that, the Air Force Secretary is sounding the alarm, saying that China is gearing up for a possible face-off with the US. Crazy times we are living in. As many of you know, my background is in venture capital and investment banking. I have a large network still very much within that space. And I'm telling you guys that the general consensus is that this war will help trigger the final collapse of the purchasing power of the dollars in your pocket, in your bank accounts, your retirement accounts. How fast this happens is up for debate, but I can tell you that these guys are planning for the worst, and they're planning right now. Millions of Americans will be left holding a bag of essentially worthless paper, and there's not a lot of time to prepare. Our money is already losing its purchasing power at the fastest pace in the last 40 years. But in my opinion, that is nothing compared to what is coming. The big banks and money men on Wall Street are already preparing because they know that this will have drastic implications for the financial markets. This is one of the biggest drivers to the crypto ETF movement that we're seeing taking place right now. And if you think this won't affect the rest of you outside of the US, you have another thing coming. CEO of JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, stated that these attacks on Israel and Palestine will have far-reaching impacts on energy and food markets, global trade, geopolitical relations. This may be the most dangerous time the world has seen in decades. Now, I want to get to the crux of this video rather than explain much of what you can find elsewhere regarding war and its possible implications. And that's the dollar, and by proxy, any other currency around the world will lose value fast. And I don't mean it will lose purchasing power slightly more than your average inflation models. I mean it will lose value to the point of a crisis where not only will you lose perceived value in your net worth, but you will also potentially struggle to pay for goods and services, to pay rent if you make the wrong moves. Now, this isn't meant to be doom and gloom. I'm not into scare tactics, but burying your head in the sand could be catastrophic for you. This is what most people will unfortunately do. It's scary to think that so many people will be ruined without even realizing it, sitting back and watching their purchasing power evaporate. And look, I know that we've been hearing about a dollar crisis forever. For the longest time, economists have been warning that our debt is unsustainable and that the dollar will eventually crash. But our government just kept getting more and more into debt. And for a global reserve currency, that's a dangerous thing to do on a global scale. And we haven't really seen a collapse yet. I truly believe that this is about to change. It all started in 2020 when the Fed went absolutely crazy with its printing press. We all saw it. In those 2 years following COVID-19, we printed 80% of all dollars in existence. Think about how insane that is. Then after we printed more money than ever before, our government told us inflation would not be a problem. Even after prices began to increase, they said inflation would be transitory. And they lied. We can tell this because of how expensive everything has gotten. Just go to the groceries store and tell me that groceries aren't multiples in price compared to what they were a short time ago. You used to be able to spend $100 and come back with 4 bags of groceries. Now you'll be lucky to fill up 1 bag. Inflation is already killing the retirement dreams of millions of us. We're seeing the biggest poverty increase over 50 years. Countless Americans are already living in fear because every month they have to decide if they're going to pay rent or if they're going to buy food. And let's face it, the dollar crash has already begun. And unfortunately, to add insult to injury, we're also seeing another terrifying trend called de-dollarization. It started in early 2022 when the US government froze all dollar reserves of Russia's central bank in retaliation to the Ukraine war. And to be clear, these were not American assets. These were dollars owned by the Russian central bank and the Russian people. But because they were held in US dollars, our government had the ability to freeze them. So the rest of the world watched that unprecedented move and they started thinking, well, wait a second. If the US can do that to Russia, a nuclear superpower, they can do that to pretty much anyone. And that's why now 19 countries have already announced plans to dump the US dollar. And instead, they're going to trade in their local currencies. And to be clear, we're not talking about tiny, obscure countries that nobody can even find on a map. I'm talking about countries like Russia, China, India, the two biggest economies in South America, Brazil and Argentina, Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil producer, and even France and a bunch of European countries. This de-dollarization trend is not slowing down, it's accelerating. And at the expense of a potential war? The bottom line is everyone is losing trust in the US dollar, and rightly so. So what do we do? The simple answer, if there is such a thing, start buying assets you have more faith in. Gold was once a go-to scenario in situations like this. In fact, it still largely is for many. Silver is another. My take is follow the money. The money, i.e. investment banks. As we can see, they are going balls deep into crypto right now. This is one of the reasons I strongly believe we are going to undergo the mother of all bull cycles, as we've not only seen big money entities start to understand the opportunity and returns within the crypto space, but now they're almost being forced into diversifying large percentages of their assets under management as a protection protocol against war, against a global crisis, and a devaluation of fiat currency in general. If ever we were to undergo a major catalyst or 10 that push the world we live in into faster and faster adoption of crypto, into an inevitable situation where crypto becomes very much the norm, it was now. I more strongly than ever believe we are on a ticking clock to make the most of this accumulation stage right now in advance of all this craziness. If you're watching this, you are still earlier than most, can get a serious head start on the rest of the world, which is crazy to say. Check out our private group to see where we are putting our money right now and how we're planning for this craziness. Set positions. Start thinking outside of fiat currency, because I'm telling you, your savings account, your retirement account are going to lose value, and there isn't anything that anyone can do about it.